Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to let a few more people into the meeting. So if you just give us a minute or two so we can admit everyone. And we will get started in about a minute. Okay, I think we've got a good number of people admitted to this session, so I think we would like to get started. Welcome, thank you for joining us today. We have over 70 people signed up for this exciting new program launch. My name is Doreen Riley, and I'm the Vice President for Advancement at John Carroll. And we are really delighted to celebrate the launch of a exciting new program at John Carroll. And it has been initiated by our strategic plan, and it will be fueled by our upcoming campaign. And it is the vision and wisdom and strategy of some amazing academics on our campus. And we're hoping with the support of all of you. So many of you know our physics department. It's been an extremely strong academic program here for decades. And this program is the next bold leap for us. We really want to launch our first true engineering program for our students. And so we are starting with engineering physics. So, we base this on market demand, but we also intend to get full accreditations from all the various partners and accrediting agencies, which we will talk about today, because it shows that we are meeting the standards of the engineering profession. And this program will be one of very few in the country, which is why it's so exciting that we're announcing it. The way that this program will run today is that we ask that you keep yourself muted because we have a lot of people on the call, and that if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to probably run for 20 to 25 minutes and then give you all time to engage in questions with our guest speakers. So I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Steve Herbert, who will be partially leading this session. So many of you have met Dr. Herbert, but he is our provost and academic vice president. He is also a professor in physics. So he joined John Carroll in 2019 from Xavier, where he had been serving as the associate provost for academic affairs, dean of the graduate school, and professor of physics. And he is joined by Dr. Jeff Dick. Many of you know Dr. Dick. He is our professor and department chair for physics. And he joined John Carroll in 2003. And he has done many things in research, especially his experimental condensed matter research lab, which is centered on the measurements of low temperature electrical and thermal transport properties of materials, with an aim to reveal underlying electron and photon conduction mechanisms. So he has received lots of money from NSF. We love that, the National Science Foundation, for a lot of his research. And he joins us after getting his PhD from Case and a postdoc fellow at the University of Michigan. So he's very active with our students, very active with our student physics chapter, very active with the American Physical Society. And so we are really happy to have these two experts help us kick off this program. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Herbert and Dr. Dick. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. It's a distinct pleasure and privilege to be with you today and talking about exciting events in my home department at John Carroll and really acknowledging all the great work that's come before, not just in the recent history, but going back decades for the engineering physics program. We'll put all this in context. I would like to immediately correct Doreen a little bit. We're probably going to be more like 30 or 35 minutes. Both Jeff and I talk for a living, and so we tend to do that very well. This will be a handoff between Jeff and myself, and I'll sort of look at some of the strategic overview stuff, and Jeff's, of course, been in the weeds, especially when putting this program together. So he's going to lead you through, I think, the more detailed aspects of it. We'd like to leave enough time for questions, so please be thinking about questions that you may have for us as we get through this. So as we are talking about this, the exciting part of this is the next bold leap for John Carroll, particularly in the STEM and particularly in our physics department. So, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The physics department has really anchored the engineering part of this, and it's been largely through the engineering program, which has, I think, fairly been characterized as an applied physics program. And what we'd like to do is really take that to the next step. Historically strong, we have some great outcomes. Jeff's going to lead you through some of that, some context. This is the next big step for us, and it's not just for the physics department. It's really thinking about STEM more broadly. And how do we engage with other areas in science and technology and mathematics to really elevate the whole thing? Typically, our STEM majors are about 1/3 of all of our majors, even though when you look at the departments in it, it's more like 10%, 15% of all the departments. But about 1/3 of our majors are STEM majors. So it's historically strong at John Carroll, something we need to continue to grow. And then feed the demand that we have for more engineering-focused outcomes. So as we look, well, we've had engineering for physics for decades, since the 80s. So what is this about this next step? So engineering physics takes this, you can read the definition, but it takes us the strong place of the natural sciences, particularly the physics aspect, and it elevates it towards what are the practical outcomes. So if you think about sort of the natural science aspect, engineering is an applied science more generally. You can get into very specific things that get a little less than that, but applied science is what an engineering aspect is. But as engineering has become professionalized over the last several decades, it actually has a disciplinarity unto itself that elevates it to something a little bit different than just applied science. And so an engineering physics program properly sits in that space in between what you would call pure and applied science and an engineering outcome. And engineering physics takes the strengths of the questioning and the skill set necessary for asking tough questions and really starts to look at how do we look at real world applications and problem solving. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to dive into a little bit about engineering physics at John Carroll, what we've done, and then where we're heading forward after that.
Okay, thanks, Steve. That's a great start. I'm also super happy to be here, and I'm glad to see so many people here. As was alluded, this has been around for a long time. The engineering physics major at John Carroll since the 1980s, and our students have leveraged that into really good options, right, into the workforce and into graduate school. But we're really interested in pushing this further into an accredited program. And engineering physics, like Steve, he gave a nice definition, but it really prepares students to tackle very complex problem in multidisciplinary areas. Okay, and so these are the ones that are at the forefront in the 21st century challenges, things like biophysics and computational science, nanotechnology, renewable energy. So these are people that that are situated at the interface of things, where things can move really quickly and at the forefront. I want to give a couple of examples of some engineering physics majors. I might say EP once in a while. That means engineering physics. Ariana was from the class of 2016. She's now at Intel, and this is a great link to what's happening right now in Ohio. The report that there's going to be a major facility in Ohio coming soon, and I had a brief interaction with her before this call, and I think she may even be here, but she's reported that Intel loves engineering physics people. They are these people that are interdisciplinary. They're problem solvers extraordinaire. And so she's a great highlight for the kind of thing that somebody with engineering physics can do. Spencer Furin on the right is another example. He works at NASA now as an electrical engineer. This sort of shows that you go into a field and you're not called an engineering physicist. You can go into a lot of different fields. And of course, NASA is an example of a very dynamic place. And Spencer I pulled some quote that he provided earlier that says, every college will promise to prepare you for a career, and John Carroll definitely will too. But that's where most of them stop. JCU, on the other hand, won't just make you more employable, it will help you become a better person. And so that's one of the unique opportunities at John Carroll, situated in a liberal arts university, which is a kind of a non-traditional place to be situated for engineering. So this is a good example of where we've got alumni at all of these locations now. And that certainly they'll continue to be good places for our graduates. I will say here, though, that more and more our graduates are reporting that they've got the question: is your program ABET accredited? And they sometimes face hurdles getting that first interview. We know that our students, when they get that interview, they're well prepared to succeed. But what we're planning here is going to make them even better, and they're going to have that sort of certification that goes with that. So we've, of course, done some market research here. The career outlook is good. Job growth over the next 10 years for physics and engineering, and I put both of them because there isn't, that engineering physics career path that there's numbers on. Back up one, if you would. And it's we're going to be situated somewhere in between. This is from Bureau of Labor Statistics. Starting salaries are generally very good, and mid-career salaries are really good. And you may be surprised to know that 130K is the physics number, and the 96K is the engineering number. And our graduates now get these kinds of job titles, and they often they may look to you sort of like interdisciplinary sorts of positions, but they do get traditional titles like electrical engineer and so on. Also, there's a lot of engineering work in Northeast Ohio. So I did a little bit of research here that the BLS gives this sort of designation of high or very high engineering employment, both in Ohio and specifically in Northeast Ohio. And a lot of these sort of interdisciplinary areas, as well as traditional engineering areas, materials, industrial, mechanical, electrical, biomedical, there's high employment in Ohio and Northeast Ohio. And as I was poking around, what I found this really useful survey about what do employers look for in their future candidates, and here they're listed: problem-solving skills, quantitative and analytical skills, and teamwork skills. And really, this is engineering physics. And with this accreditation effort, the teamwork is going to be even more emphasized than we do now, which is really important. So I think Steve is going to.
Yep. I was just unmuting myself. Thanks.
Okay.
So, I came to John Carroll just under 3 years ago. I was delighted to enter a department that was so forward-looking. They had engineering physics there as a specific version of applied physics, which had been in the vernacular for since the 80s, I think. But they were really more focused than most. And so they did a lot of groundwork to pave the way for where we are now. And so when I came in, we were just starting as a university, our strategic planning process. We sort of asked the question, okay, where do we go from here? We knew our STEM aspects, our STEM efforts were strong. Our enrollments were strong. Even as some of our overall enrollments across the university declined, our STEM enrollments remained flat to slightly increasing at times. And so we knew this is the strength that we could build on. And so conversations with Jeff, I know the department had been thinking about, okay, what's our next step? This is the next step. So we really sort of pulled the trigger and started moving forward and organizing towards that. It became part of our strategic plan, right? So sort of broadly speaking, how do we shore up the programs that we know need to be strong but could need to be strengthened? How do we build on strengths? And then how do we fill the gaps where we're not in? And that's a whole another conversation. We're really exploring and pursuing our healthcare options with vigor and strength. But we're also then mindful of how do we build on the strengths that we already got. Some of our healthcare options build on the STEM programs. This is that next logical step. How do we strengthen what we've got in our physics and engineering, engineering physics programs? How does that bleed over into helping chemistry, biology, exercise science, and physiology, to some extent psychology, which is right on that periphery of STEM, and then the math, computer science, data science aspects. All of this sort of integrates. But particularly in this gem of a program that we've got in physics, how do we help shore up enrollments in it, and also fill in the gaps that we've got for how do we attract good students? One of the things that's part of our strategic plan is experiential learning, and that means that we can go out and say, hey, there are real world applications so you have not only once you graduate, but while you're here. So internships, job opportunities, job sharing. We already do that. We need to double down on that as well. So as we get into the next step for us, it's really making this tie to an engineering outcome more explicitly. And that's sort of what this next step is. Oops, wrong way. I got to turn my wheel the right way now. All right, so why this, why now? I sort of told you about the strategic plan. It addresses our current student needs and our current student demands. I can tell you, and I know Jeff has experienced this as chair, one of the most interesting conversations that I would have with students and their parents is, what can I do with a physics major? And we would talk about all the preparation and the skills that it gives you to do essentially almost anything you want. And they came in and they're always stuck on engineering. Why? Because I like math, I like science, I know engineering, there are jobs there. It was sometimes hard to pivot from, no, but you can do anything you want with a physics degree. This actually takes that off the table. Engineering physics was a good stopgap. Now I can say, you have an engineering option directly from our program. And I couldn't say that before. It does, as I indicated, it increases our internal capacity because it's a natural extension of what we're already strong at. And it allows us to then broaden beyond either this engineering program and start thinking about, well, what's next in engineering? And it doesn't have to be, well, we're going to do mechanical and electrical and we're not going to do nuclear engineering, but all the engineerings that follow from there. But then there's other things that are emerging. There's software engineering, there's systems engineering, there's other things that we can start engaging. There's biomedical engineering. We can start engaging our other STEM departments and really have this conversation. What is this effort at John Carroll, and how do we grow it organically to fit within our mission, our resources, and our capacities? It also opens up cross collaborations beyond the STEM fields, and we'll unpack that a little bit later as a presentation. So for us, this next big step is ABET accreditation, and Jeff's going to walk us through what's involved in ABET accreditation and what it means for us.
Yes, so ABET, you can see there, Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology. What we would be seeking from ABET is a general engineering accreditation. They also accredit, aerospace engineering specifically versus chemical engineering specifically. Ours would be a general engineering, and engineering physics falls under that heading. But what it does, it just signals that we know what it means to prepare future engineers, and that we have gone through all of the hoops to make sure that that's the case. It involves, in our case, significantly more engineering coursework. It involves, comparison against a rigorous set of student learning goals, which will be extensions. I mean, a lot of our student learning goals now match pretty well with that, but there are definitely some additional ones. And a comprehensive assessment and documentation of that process. Another key thing that's a huge step for us is really bringing in, real engineering expertise through hires. And then, as we've already mentioned, how important industry relations and, for student placement and so on. So really, we see this as a tool for a number of things. Just go back, one more thing back there, that it's going to be a tool for new student recruiting. I mean, there's no doubt that is key. I face that question, what do you have engineering at John Carroll? And it's always like, well, okay, let me talk you through this. Now the answer is yes. And I think Steve said that. It's a tool for experiential learning, and it's a tool for graduate placement. And, those that it's really important to get the professional engineering licensure. An ABET undergrad program is key. That has been a real hurdle for some of our students that need that. So, this is really important. The key is that it's a true engineering program, And Steve's mentioned that, you know, this is the pathway to expanded engineering efforts. You know, I talked about the potential growth in the industry. You know, those aren't huge numbers like you might see in some areas, but it's not represented at John Carroll now. So we're opening the door to what is a huge potential student market that really, you know, is looking for engineering. And I see that all the time. What do you have at John Carroll for engineering? We also have data that shows that the students that don't come here, they tend to go to, you know, schools that have engineering programs. So that's going to change. A little bit about the accreditation process. I mentioned the fact that there's a set of detailed program criteria, and these changes are already in progress. We've brought in our first cohort. So year one of the first cohort that we want to be part of the ABET success is our freshmen this year. We develop an assessment program, and then before we can even seek that accreditation certification through like a visit from professionals, as we need to graduate a student under the ABET satisfying program criteria. And so we've been studying all those steps that are involved, including beforehand a readiness review, self-study, and ending with a board decision, which for us should be in the summer of 2026. As Steve mentioned, this started longer ago than just recently. Maybe the first really formal action had to do with the last academic program review that the department underwent, and the visiting team that came to the department basically said, you have an opportunity here. You should be looking into this ABET idea. We met with alumni to discuss this. We tried to get input. You know, in late 2019, we submitted a proposal as part of this effort to you know, drafting the new university strategic plan. We were really glad that it was well received, and you know, here we are. We brought in our first cohort of students. We're in the process of a hire for a new engineering faculty member, which is really exciting. And we've more rigorously involved alumni. We're actually ahead where this says establishment of alumni working groups. This is already in place. Later on, that will evolve to a formal industrial advisory board that would generally be part of an ABET accreditation. And here, the last point on this is, you know, to celebrate that. We're going to have a big party in 2026. So what are we going to be doing through the process of getting this accreditation? We have goals and deliverables. We want to be able to double the engineering physics enrollment in the next 4 years. We want to be able to increase the retention and graduation numbers as a result as well. We want to be able to say that every student in our program is guaranteed an internship, at least one, by graduation. That would be a very powerful recruiting tool. 100% placement rate. And, you know, this is just really the first step. Successful ABET program at John Carroll can open the door to further specializations. And, you know, at John Carroll and in the Cleveland area, biomedical would be a great choice. And of course, computer and software engineering. There's a lot of words here, but one of the, you know, foundational things in our planning and actions toward accreditation is to establish these high-level program educational objectives. And there's a whole process that we go through, including engaging with stakeholders, which includes our students, our alumni, and our current alumni board. And we've sent out these PEOs, program educational objectives, and requested feedback through a survey. We put them together so that it also meshes really well with the JCU mission, which is really key. The first one is essentially has to do with knowledge and preparing students to be able to succeed in graduate school or when they pursue professional licensure. The second one has to do with kind of fundamentals and applying those fundamentals in a job setting. And finally, one that's kind of probably unique to John Carroll is our foundation, which is really the liberal arts foundation. And I'm just going to read that one. We're going to leverage the Jesuit liberal arts education to serve society in ethical and socially conscious ways, to be adaptable, and to lead with character in their profession, which I think maybe to those alums, it sounds like John Carroll. So I think it does. So what will look different? Of course, we have engineering physics now. We really want it to look very different. We want to, you know, it's not okay to you know, sit still, right? It's also, we don't want to just catch up to our competition. We want to take this bold leap, right? We want to, with our actions, we want to move ahead of others. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be doing hiring for faculty expertise as well as staffing. We need to increase our required engineering credit hours. And that involves new coursework, and there's new coursework already this year for the freshmen. We're going to also be revising some of our existing coursework, pitching it more, you know, from physics traditionally more toward engineering, and those will become engineering physics courses. We're also going to do this simultaneously by, you know, preserving alternative pathways through the department. The department has made efforts to address people with non-traditional interests, including entrepreneurship or into the medical field, or, you know, those that are really here for a traditional physics major to go to physics graduate school. So we're still trying to address those folks as well, but putting our primary effort into this engineering and really trying to grow that. So what would it look like? We have here a schematic of the first floor of the Dolan Science Center, and physics is located in the east wing. They're kind of on the right, you know, there's research labs, there's teaching labs, there's lecture space, offices, and so on. So a lot of this involves just upgrade of things that we're doing reasonably well now, and we're going to make it fantastic. So our investments will take our existing electronics laboratory and modernize it with new and you know, the best electrical engineering workstations. That's our current emphasis now. We have a machine shop. We recently invested in cleaning that up and getting it tuned up. If it looks old to you, it is. It looks old to me too. It is functioning, but we really want to go into, you know, the 21st century with CNC machining, 3D printing, and other sorts of manufacturing, additive and subtractive manufacturing tools, and really to support what's going to be one of the new things is the engineering, design, and development and manufacture aspect that we don't really address now. Also, we're going to modernize our computational tools using industry standard software. We teach LabVIEW and MATLAB now, but we're going to expand that, and we're going to have to, you know, bring in new software licenses for design, control, analysis, modeling for, you know, for engineering careers. Go ahead. Is that wanting to go forward? Okay, I think this is now Steve's camp.
Yeah, I think it's important, you know, John Carroll, we still really are somewhat on the smaller side community. We're not a small college. I keep emphasizing that. We are a medium-sized comprehensive university, but we do not have the challenges of Ohio State, right? So when we think about our efforts, we really need to think synergistically. How is this augmenting, supporting, and enhancing other efforts? So as we look at, you know, the needs that we have to expand our facilities, particularly with an engineering effort and a focus on that, there are a couple of things that come out. You know, we've got a project in the library. We're going to modernize and renovate the library, and we're looking at what would traditionally be called a makerspace. We're terming it Ignite space or Ignite space. It's really focused on how do we solve the world's wicked hard problems. And some of those are in, you know, I would say making and engineering like capacities. So as we think about designing the spaces to support our engineering, some of those spaces could be used for efforts that would live in the library. And similarly, some of our needs could be located in the library to serve broader needs in the humanities-based Ignite space and ideation, and in business and in other prototyping. So we see this as a companion space to what would live in the library in this, the world, solving the world's hard problem space. Similar for entrepreneurship, we already have an entrepreneurial physics aspect. This would certainly play into that. You have great needs for businessmen and women and managers to have enough knowledge of the STEM fields and technology to be able to be effective managers of that. There's some interesting programs. There's one well-known one at Notre Dame that really takes science graduates and gives them the business management skills. So you think in terms of how do we play in that space, not competing with Notre Dame necessarily, but in a sense, we can start thinking about these synergistic activities with a relationship to entrepreneurship. We have a Choose Ohio First grant, which has a STEM and STEM focus. So there's a whole host of ways we can bring diversity and diverse candidates, both for students and I think hopefully diverse staff and faculty on board to really grow our diversity efforts. That's something that's a big push at John Carroll because that's where the world is heading and we need to be there. It's also a part of our mission. And as we previously mentioned, it really helps us to think about, all right, so we've got these facilities, chemistry, biology, exercise science can look at this and say, wow, I can use that, or I can use those capacities to really serve this program or this aspect or this course or these students. And you get lots of interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and interdimensional in the effort sense outcomes that our students, quite frankly, are already leading the way for us, right? So we have a host of students who are not just this major, but they're this major and this major and this minor. And guess what? They're going in very non-traditional paths when they get out of here and making their own way. And they're already showing us the way towards that interdisciplinary and not just one thing anymore. And so as we look at this, we're thinking hard about how does this fit into all the other things that we are doing and want to continue to doing. So I want to emphasize that as well. That's important for us. I think this is yours, Jeff.
Yeah. So we have looked at the financials. That's important, right? So how do we get this done? So what I'm showing here is tracking basically the current academic year, which is 2021-22. We have our first year of that first ABET cohort, and we're going to follow them all the way through until they're graduated. And then at the conclusion of summer of 2026, that's when we can be accredited. The visits would be taking place during 25-26, and the deliberations with the ABET board and so on. So that's
Jeff, I think Jeff, excuse me. I think it's important to mention that these are costs and revenues over and above what we already experience.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I'll talk just through some of the assumptions here. There's a lot of detail here, but just a high level picture of this first is it does show some rapid investment that puts us in the best possible position for this first cohort of students. And with this rapid investment, that is going to be driving student recruitment. When you see change, you can recruit students, results in enrollment growth, which results in our income, right? Over and above what we have now. So yeah, like Steve said, this is all about over and above what we're spending now and income that we have now with our current students. And so new operating expenses, that would be things like personnel, staffing for technical side of things, machining and so on, as well as new hires. We're in the process of a hire now. This first hire is actually a conversion of a visiting assistant professor position that this person is concluding their 3-year term and moving on. And so the new person will be a tenure track engineer. And so that's a small investment, but it gets us going. And then we would ramp up the other staffing, software licenses over time. And so that's new operating expenses. So you can see that sort of grow and then stabilize, right? New capital, it ramps up more quickly so that we can get our our infrastructure in place to have this first cohort be successful. They're ready in the junior year to learn all of the engineering tools so that they can implement it in a very significant engineering design experience for that whole senior year. And so that rises and falls, right? And then those one-time investments will go away. It does include also some research budgeting for tenure, the new higher startup funding for research, okay? But at least 250K of that is basically new stable infrastructure for our teaching enterprise for the engineer. And so on the income side, again, the goal here is, I think, is relatively conservative. It's not crazy. So relative to the number of engineering physics majors that we have now, the current year, of course, we have 0 additional students because we've got those students. In year 2, we want to be able to make enough noise that we can start attracting more students, 2, and so on. And so this is an aggregate number of total new majors, so that by the time the class, the first ABET cohort graduates, we have 30 majors, which is about a doubling of the number of engineering physics majors that we have. And then that tuition revenue that brings in, you can see becomes significant. This assumes only tuition revenue and not room and board. So again, that's on the conservative side. The net income, we do see that there are some negatives. Maybe it's not surprising. It requires, this investment up front. This is aggressive so that, we really want to grow that enrollment. We want to show people that we are making a bold leap, and that will generate excitement. And so in the long run, this will be self-sustaining, and it should be revenue generating endeavor. A lot of these things is just review. It maybe sets up Doreen's next slide. So what are our needs here? There will be costs associated with, new engineering faculty and staffing. We hope that, fantastic enrollment growth funds that. There might be opportunities to help there. We're going to be establishing an ABET Technical Advisory Board. The seeds of that are there. We've got like 8 or 10 alums already committed and helping us out in the development of this program and where it's headed for the future. We're going to be obviously bringing in capital and reorienting facilities to accommodate our changes, software licensing, projects. There's going to be projects that students do. There's going to be consumables. They're making things, right? That's going to be exciting, but there's going to be some, operational costs associated with that. Hard work to develop industry partnerships for internships, for senior design projects, and for connections for the next step into the real world. And of course, with this new success, we're going to be thinking about what's next. All the way along, and it's already started, a marketing campaign to make sure people know what we're doing and, telling our stories. So that's also a piece.
So I think this is where I come in. So we are really excited about the prospects of this program for John Carroll's future. And I hope we've been able to outline how we could do this quicker with some donor investments to help fuel some of these things to be in place when students come visit, when students tour, to have all of these both faculty, equipment, software, all of that in place, plus all of the alumni support for internships. So we invite you on this Zoom call, and we will be out talking to others to help us really get this moving more quickly. So there's a variety of naming opportunities or funding opportunities depending on where people are. So any professorship at John Carroll is at least $1 million to name it. It might be a little over $1 million depending on what we really need. But if you want to name a professorship, we ask that it be at least $1 million. There are funding opportunities in labs. There are some renovations that we outlined. So the main one is $500,000, but there are some other investments that also could help us. If you want to fund a lectureship to bring in a scholar scientist, a panel, whatever we want to do to both expose our students to different expertise, and even some of our alums who are doing amazing things. Like, we'd like to be able to do that on a regular basis. And that is outside of our current funding model in our budget. So we would love if someone would sponsor that. That's also a naming opportunity. And then there's all kinds of equipment that we need. So of course, we'd love all brand new, but we would love some other equipment that people have access to, or just a capital budget, because these things will have a life cycle. Even though we will invest heavily up front, over time, they will need to be replaced. And of course, really funding internships for students. Not only will we need partners to help open up doors for our students for internships, but we would love to have the students have a funded internship, whether it's research, whether it's working in a lab, whether it's working with your company. And so internships would range from $5,000 to $10,000, depending on how long they would run and what the students would do. Any scholarship, any internship helps our students. And then there's a range of pricing for licenses that are expensive. We want to do this the right way. And so if we can get a funding source to really grow that, we do hope that over time, this does generate revenue for the university. But where we are today is we really need some help. We would love it if you all would help give us some money to get it started. Because I think the students will come. I think we believe they will come, but we've got to have the things in place and the accreditation and the labs and the tools so that they are like, yes, this is something that I can see myself doing. So
I want to add to that. First of all, I know the students will come, right? That's not just a belief. I know they will come because we're already getting interest and we can't satisfy some of their interest. And so they turn away. So I know some of those are going to stick. That's one thing. The second thing, I'd just like to share our experience in one of our other main strategic initiatives that I mentioned, healthcare. We had a few lead gifts that have really helped us as we're doing our planning. And I want to be very specific. There are some programs that we're getting off the ground. And I would say the John Carroll way, and not just John Carroll, lots of academic institutions is, I would call it organic growth, right? Let's see what we can start, see if the enrollments are there, and then we can start investing as the time. And the budget we showed you really is that philosophy. But what we are able to do now with some of these lead gifts is say, I need to hire an expert, a program director, someone, and I don't have to ask, okay, how are we going to pay for that? I've got a gift that I can draw on to get us off the ground and get it started. And I don't have to think twice about it. That is a real gift, both figuratively and literally. And I don't want to undersell that either.
Right.
So I wanted to emphasize that.
And I mean, we have had, I don't know if you want to go to the next slide. We've had some alums, I think some of you are on the call, who have stepped forward to really help us invest in our students. Called their friends, called their colleagues, particularly Matt Karisman, who's really taken a leadership role in trying to endow an internship fund for our students. But we need more alumni to come help us connect the dots, whether it's cash or just partnerships. So we look forward to expanding that as the program rolls out. And I just want to express my gratitude to those alums, especially Matt, for really seeing the vision and really stepping forward and hoping to bring some friends along with you. So
can I just add a couple names just really quick?
Yes,
so yes, Matt is awesome. But we also have Jim DeSiena and Ernie Petty, who are department alums, you see. So they've been participating for a long time on helping us with this process. And Carl West is also in there. So the industry relations group is on deck. So get ready, folks.
Right. So, obviously we would love for you to reach out to us, but we will be reaching out to you to help expand this program. So these are the different contact people. But I do want to talk about a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat, if that's okay, unless we want to add anything before we move to the chat. Okay.
I think we're ready.
Okay, so it's 12:43, so we want to make sure we're sensitive. There was a question in the chat that asked, how can we better connect and engage our non-STEM alumni about this program who are in leadership roles with other companies that might employ our engineering physics grads? So, I know how we would do it on our side, but I don't know if Steve and Jeff, you want to.
Well, I would take note of that. Our board chair is a non-STEM graduate of John Carroll who works in a heavily STEM industry, Toledo Mentler, as retired board chair and president. So they exist, right? We have tons of non-STEM graduates, but are in STEM related fields. And I think in some ways, this session today kind of officially kicks off our campaign efforts, so to speak, right? This has been bubbling for a while, and it's just bearing fruit in a public way on a campaign sense now. So this is just the beginning of the outreach. It's a very good question, one that is on our minds. And so we're thinking about it, but we welcome any thoughts and any connections that you may have.
Thank you. Another question in the chat is, what other Jesuit universities have programs like this? And
I can start at least on this. So
Okay.
so yeah, I didn't get to some of the research we've done. Engineering at Jesuit schools, first of all, about a third have have engineering programs. Some are like very comprehensive with graduate programs like Santa Clara, Marquette, and some that you've heard of, don't have any engineering at all, like Georgetown and Fordham. What about engineering physics? I'm aware that Xavier is in the process of trying to put this up, and so we would be the second, as far as I know. And with the ABET accreditation. There are other schools in Ohio, small schools included, that are starting to move toward engineering with ABET accreditation, not engineering physics, but other kinds of engineering efforts. But we would be quite unique. I mean, there's literally 19 ABET accredited engineering physics programs nationwide. So we hope to be the 20th. Maybe Xavier's got a head start, but anyway, I know that
Xavier only has a head start in the ABET accreditation, not in engineering physics.
No, that's right.
They started engineering physics 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, I think we had a much bigger head start on on that score. After we posted our ad, another program was like, oh, we're doing the same thing, can we compare notes? So I think that there's going to be more of these programs, and so I think we're ahead of the curve.
Yep. Great, thank you. Another question in the chat is asking if our board of directors will receive a copy of this presentation. So certainly the advancement committee and the board has access to all of these that we're doing. We kicked off nursing a couple of months ago, so they would absolutely have access to this. And I would anticipate great feedback from them, but thank you for that suggestion. So are there any other questions, comments?
You just blurt them out too, if you want.
No, these are legit. These are the ones that are coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really excited about the program, and we think it's a great vision. It hits market. We think that donors will help us do this. Alums will help us do this. Community partners will help. It's much needed in this region, and we are excited to launch it today with all of you. Please spread the word. I think you will get copies of all this after this session is over. There were a few people on the West Coast who wanted to participate, and I don't know if they're on. I haven't seen their name on there, but we will share it on the back end. So let's see, one more question that just popped in if we have time. It's 12:48. So someone wanted to know when we would hear more about the Ignite space probably in the library. So Steve, I don't know if you want to take that one on.
Yeah, so that's when we looked at our first version of renovating the library. First of all, we've already started phase 1. That's complete, actually. If you haven't been to campus, phase 1 of the library renovation is done. That's the Mastrantonio Family Student Success Center. That's a small portion of the library that's been renovated to bring student success efforts all together under one umbrella and in one space in the library. And that's been very successful and very well received. And then the question is, okay, phase 2 is let's expand this to the rest of the library and think in terms what goes in the library. Library is no longer just a place to put books. In fact, it hasn't been that for decades, even though we still think of it that way. It is a space where students, faculty, and staff come together, and it's the hub of campus, a nexus where you have this interchange. And one of those is, how do we leverage students and faculty and staff to really address our Ignatian mission, the world's wicked hard problems? And that lies in all the different programs and majors that we've got, and all the different efforts we got in co-curricular. And if we want to bring it into a space where we can bring tiger teams, if you will, of students from different majors to address specific problems, either course-based or co-curricular based or just of their own passion. How do we provide a facility for that? If you're familiar with CASE's Think Box, it's a similar idea, but the Think Box at CASE is really designed as an incubator for new businesses, right? This is an incubator for solving wicked hard problems. So it's really got an Ignatian spin to it. And so we're searching for a name. We kind of settled on Ignite Space. The Ignatian ignites because you go forth and set the world on fire. We're willing to sort of, workshop that a little bit. That's going to come more explicitly as we talk, as Advancement and other people go about the plans for the library. So we had an initial set of plans. We're going back, revisiting them and recasting them. This space will still be in there. What it's going to look like, stay tuned.
And if I could just add, we will look for funding opportunities, equipment opportunities, investment opportunities for that Ignite space. Because we can do it, but it would be so much better if we had more investments to make it amazing.
Right.
So as we roll that one out, there will be opportunities for funding. We did get one more question in the chat, if we have time to address it. One of our participants wants to know what the future of the 3-2 program is. Are we going to continue it? Are we going to encourage students to do it? Or are we going to de-emphasize it as this program comes online?
I can address that.
Okay.
So the quick answer is that it's going to continue to be part of our offerings. There's no doubt that there may be students that want to start at John Carroll and really they want to graduate as a civil engineer as a bachelor's, and at the bachelor's level, or you pick the discipline. We have a great relationship with CASE. They love our students. We see that, when those students go, we lose our seniors, right? So on the other end of that, if we have our own in-house engineering that, a lot of the students, it's a tough decision that they love John Carroll. Some of them do end up staying because they see engineering physics as a good option for them, but some do go. So, the selfish point of view is we want our own engineering and we want everybody to want to be here for 4 years. So it will be continued. People will still be able to understand how to do our program. We've included, as we think about the health of the entire department, which includes these pathways, there's no doubt that the engineering physics becomes a big and challenging major, but we are still providing these pathways that are in existence now.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have time for one more question, and we do have a question in the chat. So here's a question for future discussion. Are there departments at John Carroll taking up the emerging STEM challenges? For example, communication of technical problems and solution to non-scientist audience, i.e. clean energy, i.e. vaccines. So Dr. Herbert, I don't know if you want to take that on.
Yeah, so the quick answer is yes, but I don't want to oversell that, right? Because we're in the very beginning stages. We have a number of programs that are perennially strong, but we're looking at, okay, how do we upgrade, strengthen, refresh, bring into the, to the 20th century, 2020s. And then what is it we're going to need ahead? And so that takes a little bit of effort to have programs look a decade into the future and think about what we're going to need. Programs such as this, where we're really reimagining what the physics department, what STEM is at John Carroll, really lend itself to sort of this reflection and discernment process internally, both by, I would say, School of STEM in this case, but our School of Professional Studies is doing a similar thing. Our School of Humanities and Social Sciences is doing the same. Boulder is in the process for a new dean, searching for a new dean. That process is going on right now. All of this gets wrapped up. And to answer your question, yes, but I can't point to anything right now, this specific conversation. All that's sort of in the mix. It's a great question, and it's a great thing to keep in front of us.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions in the chat. And I think that we hope that we've given you an opportunity to get a sense of where John Carroll's headed. We are very excited about this program, what it can do for our students, what it can do for our faculty community to add engineering faculty members, what it can do for the community in the region to be able to produce really amazing students ready for these professions. So we thank you for your time today. And if you have questions, please follow up with any of us, and we will share this session with you and with others as we move forward. So we have more of these coming. To put a little commercial in, we have more coming, so stay tuned. You will get invites for other topics as we roll things forward. So thank you very much for your time today, and go Blue Streaks.